How you doing?
Hey, I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well.
Yeah.
Oh, here comes my dog.
Here comes your dog. She heard the clap.
She heard the clap. Um, Thank you so much for coming over. I really appreciate it.
I heard there was sushi, so I was coming.
And I'm actually really hungry. I don't know about you.
Oh, I'm starving.
Yeah.
I'm starving. Yeah, I love sushi. So thank you for this. What a treat.
My pleasure. Absolutely my pleasure.
Mm.
So for people who may not be familiar with who you are, if you just want to give like a brief CV.
A brief CV. All right. Well, I am sometimes better known as I get sushi in my teeth as the Savvy Auntie. So I launched that brand back in 2008. It's designed primarily for women who don't have children and love the children in their life. They are childless like myself by circumstance or by choice or by an infertility challenge or fertility challenge. And the demographic that it reaches are women. I call the demographic PANK, professional aunt, no kids, PANK.
Oh wow, yeah.
And these are women who love the children in their life. They're spending their discretionary income and time on these kids and on themselves. And I'm also an author. I've authored a couple of books. The first, Savvy Auntie, The Ultimate Guide for Cool Aunts, Great Aunts, Godmothers, all women who love kids. And the second is Otherhood. It's a reported memoir. Otherhood, Modern Women Finding a New Kind of Happiness. And it's my story along with the story of millions of women who expected the marriage and children that our mothers had. And naturally, we'd have, as well, the education and career that they didn't have access to or as great access to.
Mm-hmm.
And yet many of these women remain single and childless beyond the years that they expected, or like me, way beyond the years they expected. So I look at these demographics and I do data and insights around them. And I'm also, like you, a contributor to the New York Post and the Spectator and various other outlets.
Mm-hmm.
And I do some consulting and I ghostwrite books. So I've got my hands in a few areas, but I'm really focused on right now on what's going on with women and with men and how we are so disconnected.
Yes.
And, women actually are not having the number of children that they want. Gallup came out with a new poll back in September that we know that we're already having our first child later. Woman today, did you know, women are not having their first child and more likely in their 30s or 40s, not in their 20s or teens. So we're having our first child later. Mm-hmm. And we're marrying later, et cetera. So, and what's going on? And there's so many dynamics around it. So these are the things. That was a CV. That's why I have to have a 2-page CV because it's a long story and yet a very gratifying one. I ended that just in time for you to put sushi in your mouth. So
sometimes that's how it works. Well, you said as far as men and women being more disconnected than we were before, that's how I feel as well. And sometimes it's hard to tell if that disconnect is manufactured or if it's natural. Like, are we being told that we're more disconnected and hence people just feel they're more disconnected and then they live out being disconnected, because oftentimes, like whether it's like politics or culture, you see like the horror story and then see that horror story, that's what's happening. It's happening all over the place. It's prevalent when really it's rare. So it's, for me, I do feel that it's gotten worse. I don't know how bad it is because there's an economy around us being disconnected.
Mm-hmm.
So whether it's from, radical feminists who have particular political agendas, or whether it's coming from the red pill manosphere guys who have moved past beyond male empowerment or having men have a voice when they felt like they didn't have a voice, to just being outright hateful of women and highlighting the worst woman as being the modern woman.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. Do
Mm-hmm.
you think it's actually gotten worse? You think, you know,
Well,
where's your head at?
it's definitely gotten worse in terms of political parties.
Hmm.
Women and men between the ages of 18 and 34 registered voters. Young men are moving more to the right and the women are moving more to the left. Yes, I know that I did this for the right, but my hand is with chopsticks. So the extremes are moving more toward the extreme.
Right.
However, what's interesting is in January, Gallup came out with a poll that showed that I think it's 58, might be 56. Let's go with 57% of that age group, 18 to 34, men and women, are actually independent. They actually don't want to vote for either party. They may end up doing that. Some of them lean right, lean left, but they're actually more centrist. And potentially could be because of, the more far right that is connecting with men on the right, or the far left connecting with women on the left. And I do believe, to your point on manufacturing, that there are narratives that are being told and sold on TikTok and various other social media outlets that make women feel that by being in order for women to prove we are equal to men, we have to pretend we don't care about men, we don't need men, we don't want men, and that somehow it is better to be single, it is better to be childless. And now for some women, they may want to be single. There are many women who are child-free by choice. But the idea now seems to be as if it is a more feminist ideal to be alone. And that concerns me because we are social beings. We naturally want to be with others. Now, of course, we're talking about cisgender heterosexual women audience. I know there's obviously we're not talking about gay women or cisgender women, etc. Or not cisgender women, trans women. You know what I mean? So the narrative is pushing women to think that somehow this boogeyman, the quote unquote patriarchy, is forcing them into a life that they don't want. The quote unquote trad wife, traditional wife life. I don't know what men are doing this. They'll point to the Republican Party. Sure, there are more conservative, more religious Christian on the right who may value traditional family more so, but nobody's telling you have to get married. But you shouldn't. I don't know why young women have to feel like if they get married, it's somehow doing themselves a disservice. When we know, and there's data around this, and I wish I had it at my fingertips, that actually married women are happier than single women. And as a single woman, I don't doubt it. I wish I had a man in my life. I wish I had a partner in my life. If business goes down, it'd be great to have a net. If business goes up, it'd be great to have somebody to celebrate with. I don't know why we're doing this to young women. And I could talk more about that, but going to the men, it's interesting. Again, we're talking about the far right, maybe the brosphere, the manosphere, and then even further on are the incels, et cetera. William Costello, who's at University of Texas in Austin, and David Buss's lab, evolutionary psychology, just released as an author, co-author on incels, and it's rather new, and I just perused it, but couple things stuck out to me, and that is that incels are actually more likely to lean left, not right. And what's going on with them is a whole other world. Incel being the involuntary celibate men. Now, part of that, going back to women, is that, you know, spurred by the Me Too movement, is the idea that if a man approaches a woman, people don't go to bars anymore, but wherever at a party, oh, and she's not into it, she may think he's a creep or he's harassing her. Or to your point about what's manufactured, a man may feel she might do that.
Right.
And so he stays away. And meanwhile, the girls are going there, putting on their best lashes, hair extensions, whatever, going out, and nobody's approaching them. And so they think the guys are lame. Or the guys don't show up because they're like, something could happen. What could happen to them? Like they might, what if they end up going home with one of the women and then she wakes up? Well, no, that wasn't consensual, even though it was. Maybe it's, you know, what happened to Aziz Ansari, a bad date that turns into a nightmare for the guy. We don't know. So guys, I think, are staying home. And, you know, we could say that, yeah, maybe video games, porn, all of that, a lot of it could be true. I don't know. They could be just watching Rogan. I mean, whatever it is. I feel like what women naturally want to have a partner, they are, you know, biting off their nose to spite their face, cutting off their nose to spite their face. They are pushing men away because there's this sort of threat that the men will be outed of the tribe, out of the group. And they are resisting, you know, femininity, while the men are being told that to be masculine is toxic. I wrote a piece for the Post about hyper masculinity. You know, like they're saying Rogan and even Mark Zuckerberg from Facebook, he's hyper masculine because he plays jujitsu. Now, look, if you were to like look up nerd in the dictionary, a guy like Mark Zuckerberg might come up.
Right.
He's not uber masculine, hyper masculine. And the fact is, the truth is that, and I did another piece for the Post on this, what they're missing about this idea is that actually men who do jujitsu, they actually use jujitsu, and this was in the National Institute of Health published this, that they use jujitsu for those suffering from PTSD. It helps. This is like, it helps with depression. So I don't know why it would be hyper masculine. And by the way, what is this issue with masculinity? Women want masculine men. Yeah. Women don't want the quote unquote soy boy. You know, women don't want the guy who can't protect them. And Brad Wilcox, who a professor of sociology, and just came out with a book called Get Married. He says that, in fact, women are more interested in a man who's protective of her, who is masculine, than how much money he earns.
Right.
In fact, those women will say that it's unlikely that they would ever divorce that masculine man, even if he doesn't earn as much, even as her. So we have a lot of, to your point, we have a lot of conversations that are in the ether, that are on websites and blogs and TikTok, et cetera. But to your point, again, are not necessarily what's happening. But that said, that narrative is, I think, pushing women and men further apart. And the fact that a woman on the left would never date a guy on the right and vice versa. I mean, I see this as a single woman on dating apps, and I'm in my 50s, and guys will say, no Trumpers, you know, and I'm not a Trump woman, but don't tell me who to vote for.
Right.
Like what? So you wouldn't, but you would, that's your main thing. Of all the things you're saying no, somebody who may have voted for Donald Trump, what are we doing? We are making it so hard for people to connect. And then we wonder why young men and women are suffering from depression at the highest levels we've seen in I don't know how long. I don't know how long because I haven't done the research, but it's been a while.
Yeah. Man, you said a lot.
I know, right?
Because there's so many different things to kind of unpack. I think you're absolutely right when it comes to women wanting a masculine man. And so, like, a little bit of backstory for me, I didn't grow up with my father.
Mm.
And so I grew up with my mom and my sister. And we moved a lot. So I didn't have a stepdad.
Uh-huh.
I didn't really have any male figures in my life. And it wasn't until I got much older, I would even venture to say not that long ago, maybe a handful of years or so ago, that I really started to understand the mannerisms and the things that I was failing on, right? And
in what way failing?
Failing as far as masculinity, failing as far as confidence. Like, I didn't realize how important confidence was, and I struggled with confidence pretty much my entire life. And I had to overcome anxiety and things like that. Like, a woman doesn't want to be around a man who they can't, if he's unsure in a precious moment where things are stressed.
Yep.
Like, that's not a guy you feel safe with.
Right. You're absolutely right.
You know, I try to break things down into like a simple way of thinking, like safety.
Yep.
And I really started to understand how important safety is for women. And if they're around someone who is, like, we always try to make it sound like olden days, or like, you know, oh, you know, he's a protector. Like, we talk like that. I don't think someone's like, yeah, I like him, he has a good job, he's a protector. Like, I don't think we consciously think that. It's just something you feel. Yeah. I don't feel safe with you. Right. There's something about this guy I don't feel safe with. Yeah. And I had to show that I had the level of confidence within myself, because if you lack confidence, then I don't think I can feel safe with you. And if something was to happen, whether it's like actual danger or whether it's some sort of pressure situation, like, I need you to be there. I need you to be my rock. Yep. And that level of confidence is different for men when we look at women. For us, I think it's security, like, or insecurity. Yeah. Is insecurity, we all have some sort of insecurity about something, but is it so much so that it's detrimental? Because that insecurity removes our peace. So if like, for example, this week I'm going to DC. If my wife was insecure, she'd like, well, what woman are you going to be around? And turns out I'm interviewing 2 women, right? Oh, how long did you stay there for? Like, that would ruin the relationship, because she is insecure about some other woman possibly stealing me away. And how long were you at the store for? Like, that insecurity just eats away at a relationship. And I think that's like a really, really big thing for guys in long-term relationships. We want to feel like there's some sort of trust, and I don't have to constantly reassure you that I'm okay, right? So it's a little bit different. I would say, at least in my opinion, as a guy, insecurity, I can't be with a woman who is too insecure. Yeah. Because it is way more work to reassure her, and I'll never reassure her. Like, her insecurity has to come from within, and I can't force her to trust me. So she either does or she doesn't.
I blame He's Just Not That Into You, the book and the movie, for that. Do you know about that book and movie?
My wife and I, we were just talking about that.
Oh, were you?
Yeah, because she was married. When we first met, she was married to someone. She was with him for 19 years. Oh, wow. Overall, but they were married for 9. And she's told me all, like, the entire backstory. So actually, it was funny enough, like, last week, maybe it was earlier this week, I told her, I was like, Michelle, he wasn't that into you. And so we started talking about the movie. She's like, oh my God, I watched the movie while we were together by myself. And I was like, oh my God, I think that's us. And yeah.
Well, yes, and well, for those who are watching, listening, and don't know, so it came out of a scene in Sex and the City from way back when, where Berger, who's Carrie's boyfriend at the time, was out with her, and Miranda was dating somebody, and I guess a question was asked that prompted her to say, yeah, but he had a meeting the next day, so he didn't sleep over, or he didn't come over, or whatever it was. I said, well, because he's just not that into you. And she was like, well, what do you mean? No, he's totally into me. I mean, there was no texting in that day, which is hard to believe.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he called me or whatever. And no, a guy's not saying no to sex. He's just not that into you.
Mm-hmm.
And what it translated to, because then it became a book and then the movie, is this, well, if he didn't call you, you went out Saturday night. If he hasn't texted you by Tuesday, he's just not that into you. Or if he asks you out, but he had to postpone, he's just not that into you, or like whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And women have become sort of alert to this, and their friends will say, well, I mean, he's probably just not into you. Like, I think you're being rejected. Like, and so women get insecure.
Mm-hmm.
And then they create this whole story in their head. And the guy finally texts and they said, oh, I thought you were, done with it. So I decided I didn't want to see you anymore, whatever it was, right? And the guy's just like, no, I was out of town or whatever, right?
Right.
So we've kind of made it harder in that aspect. I really resent that movie for that reason. And we're not patient. We are also at the same time in this time of immediacy. Like if it doesn't happen right now. So well, I don't understand. You went out with him Tuesday night. How come you haven't heard from him? I'm like, because it's Wednesday,
Mm-hmm.
2 p.m. Yeah, but if he really liked you, like he would be on it. I mean, maybe not. I don't know. But we don't give anything like a chance to grow. We're just all like, if he doesn't prove himself in that minute on whoever's time scale, then somehow he's not that into you. Now, sometimes he just isn't that into you, and that happens. But you got to give it a minute.
Right.
And to your point about insecurity, it's funny. I was, I happen to enjoy. I haven't seen all the seasons, but I'm watching the current season of Love Is Blind, that reality show where.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. I never watched it, but I know what you're talking about.
It's really interesting because so it's like 10 or 12 guys and girls, and they each go into these pods and they can't see each other. It's totally blind until they have to get engaged if they want to meet, really. Mm. And so they have these conversations, they find out what's in common, and they sort of, it's oddly, it's like, well, I'm actually dating 2 women in the pod because they, spent like 3 hours with one and 2 hours with the other, whatever. And one couple actually fell for each other, got engaged, but they meet. Like he proposes before they meet. Then they meet. Oh, they're like each other, blah, blah, blah. And then all of the couples, or like 4 or 5 couples, they go away. The show takes them away. And a woman, she's so insecure. Like one of the guys is talking to another one of the women because they didn't meet all the other women, and they're chatting, and she's madly in love with her fiance, and they're just like catching up. Oh, good to meet you. Yeah. And you hear him saying, yeah, my fiance is amazing. I love her. I have no complaints. I can't believe I met her. Meanwhile, his fiance can't hear the conversation, and she sees them talking, and she's pouting and upset. And when they're back in the hotel room, but you were talking to her, and he's like, but I love you. But you were but I'm with you. But you don't understand how I feel. No, I do. I'm listening. And I'm thinking of that as you were saying, like that insecurity we're all turned off by it. I'm like, oh my God, this is not going to last. So yeah, I think that's an issue. But anyway, so you were saying, your wife is not insecure. She's not worried. I mean, you're alone with me now in your house in New Jersey. Mm-hmm. And I don't see her banging at the door, although your guard dog, your sweet little Bella.
No, she's insecure.
Bella's more insecure.
Bella's very insecure.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, oh man. I've been there. I've been in that relationship where she's insecure. I remember this was kind of in the early days of Facebook, and I was going through it. I didn't really use Facebook like that, but I happened to going through it. I saw somebody from high school. Yeah. I was like, oh, okay. And I added them as a friend.
Right.
And then I was on the computer for a few more minutes, and then I got off and sat on the couch and was watching TV. So when I got off the computer, she happened to go from, because we had two computers. So she went from her computer and sat at my desk. And I kind of noticed, but I didn't think, I thought it was kind of weird,
Right.
but I didn't think anything of it. And she went to my desk and she was looking at it. And then she came over and smacked me in the back of the head.
Oy.
And I was like, because I didn't even see it coming. I was blindsided by
Right.
it. I was like, what the fuck was that all about? And that's what it was about. Because I added this woman who's I went to high school with.
Right.
And we weren't even in the same grade, but we had the same class. So I kind of knew who she was.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I haven't seen anything from her in a long time.
Yeah.
And I just happened to add her as
The
a
point
friend.
of Facebook.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
I mean, yeah.
I just happened to add her as a friend and it triggered that response.
Mm.
Fast forward, when we were breaking up, I discovered that she was signing onto my computer
Oy.
when I wasn't there and going and trying to search through stuff. Because something, I'm trying to remember what it was, because I'm in IT and so
Right.
is she.
Right. Oh.
And so I think I opened up an application by accident and it said, do you want to go back to the old pages? I was like, old pages? I don't use this. Right. And I was like, that's weird. Why did it ask me that? So then I just looked at the log and it showed like the day before how I left for work. I can't remember the time. Let's say I left for work at 11:50. At noon, the computer is signed back on. And then it said like 15 minutes later, the computer shut down. And then I looked at other days and it was the same thing. So I confronted her about it and she admitted that, yeah, I did do that. And I said, how long have you been doing that for? And she was like, from the very beginning. And I said, did you ever find anything? No. So why did you keep doing it?
Yeah.
You know, it was that kind of
It's almost like an addiction. Like,
yeah.
like she had to know, like okay, just one more time. Like, oh, well, he said he was texting when he was home, but he didn't text until like half an hour later. So maybe he was seeing, like, she made up stories in her head.
Yeah.
And decided that is terrible. Or maybe it's part of, maybe her girlfriends all did that. Maybe it's the thing they did. Who knows, right? Like, it's just, it's just an invasion of privacy. It's not,
Right.
I mean.
And I told her, I was like, listen, my computer is my computer. Like,
Yeah.
Don't go behind me. Don't do any of that stuff. It's not necessary at all. And I would get it maybe if I was doing something very suspicious, but I was mostly home.
Right.
Like I don't go out all the time. I don't do anything. Like I watch sometimes old episodes of Maury.
Yeah.
And he's like, why do you think he's cheating on you? He's like, well, he disappeared for 3 days. I was like, yeah, I would think you're cheating on me too.
Yeah, right.
Like, I don't do any of that stuff. I'm home all the time. When I'm going to work, when I come home.
Why did she say she did? Did she have a reason why she did it? There was nothing that sort of said.
Well, I can give you my therapy reason.
Yeah.
Right. Her ex-husband cheated on her.
Oh. Right.
And we got together not too long after the separation. And so I don't think she truly got over that. And she's always been suspicious since. And it didn't help that she would call herself a feminist.
Oh.
So I don't know if that helped at all with her trusting men.
Oh, why? Because therefore you are out to get her in some way because you're a man.
Yeah.
Ay,
or not meant to be trustworthy, I guess.
Right. Yeah. I mean, just yesterday I was telling somebody about my concerns about how we treat boys and men in America, and I teared up. We tend to frame things in America around women and how whatever the issue is, it affects women. So, for instance, a few years ago, I think it was Pew came out with a study on, I think it was Pew, may not have been, credible research on, where women were in terms of college degrees, what subject areas versus men, et cetera. And in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, women were excelling, many, I mean, it was like the 80-20 in biology. In most areas, more women were in those sciences, except math, where it was nearly at par. Maybe men were like 2% more.
Mhm.
And then engineering, electrical engineering, and computer technology. And the way that the news was framed was, men are still, women aren't doing enough in STEM. We need to give women more options, encourage women in computer technology and electrical engineering. And I'm like, where do you want the guys to go? Because boys and men are behind women, girls and women in literacy. Their chances of getting into an English department are much lower than a woman's. Why can't they have interests? These are their interests. Women are less interested. Now, I have a niece in electrical engineering and another in biology. It's not like I don't think women should be in electrical engineering or in STEM in general. Obviously, it's silly. But there are more women in college, 60-40 on average, women, men on campus.
Mm-hmm.
Where do they want the men to go? Why is everything framed around women? Women are excelling. And this is why men keep feeling like nobody sees them. And somebody once told me, a friend once told me, yeah, but, men had their turn. Like, not these guys. These guys, your 16-year-old, 20-year-old, when did he have his turn to excel in life?
Mm-hmm.
And the irony is that women want men to excel in life, women who want to marry those men. So what are we doing? Why are we deciding that men cannot go for what they're interested in and what they feel their great potential is? And then, but those are the areas where there's more money, where they're paid more. And I'm like, okay, if you marry a guy who makes more than you, is that a problem?
Yeah.
Actually, I want to go back to that reality show, Love is Blind. What I found fascinating about it, and these guys, their ages are like 20, usually like 25 to 34 plus or minus.
Mm-hmm.
They all seem to really genuinely want to get married. They all want to, at least the guys that we meet, because they don't all connect with a woman. And they even like the ones that are more, like the guys,
Right.
guys, they're like emotional about how they just want to meet somebody. And because they're finding like they can't meet anybody, it's hard to meet people. And they, sometimes these are guys who until recently, were in a place where they weren't responsible. They didn't do the right things. They didn't focus on, growing up and maturing. Right. And now they're 27. They're like, no, I want this in my life. And I am so happy. That's why I'm watching the show, because I'm like rooting for these guys, and I'm rooting for the fact that there are guys watching it saying, oh, you mean it's cool to like want to be with a woman, to want to connect with a woman? And then these guys are brave, right? Because they are proposing to a woman they've never met. And well, a lot of these engagements don't end up. Some of them do. Then some of these people have been married since. And they're seeing like these guys are capable of doing it. And I'm just hoping that more guys are watching that. And also, frankly, the women. They're seeing how in love the women are. And that, maybe you have to take some risks when it comes to love. And on the flip side, I hope women have to, do what they can not to turn men off by sort of, rolling their eyes if a guy comes over to them at a party. Okay, he may not be for you, but be nice.
Right.
Talk to him for a minute. Like, I've said to guys who, are not, the coolest, most attractive men. I'm like, you guys have it going, because the great looking, cool, like A+ guys, they're never rejected, and they don't want that girl to be the first to reject them. So they kind of sort of standoffish, just expecting the woman to come to them.
Mm-hmm.
Those guys who are less secure in their looks or their physique or whatever, go for those girls, because the girls are getting dressed up to go out to hopefully meet somebody. Like, because the great looking guys that they're looking at aren't going to ask them out because they don't want to be rejected, because they've never been rejected. The guys who were rejected, you know, whatever, 8 out of 10 times. Well, hey, what's one more rejection?
Right. You know, part of the thing, I actually wrote an article about this. Part of the reason why dating is so difficult, especially these days, is because we're trying to date strangers.
Right.
And most people aren't, I don't want to say most people, a lot of people don't listen to their gut, right? And it's really, really hard to tell the character of an individual you just met.
Yeah.
Right. So you need a little bit of time to kind of get a general sense. But what used to happen is, I mean, well, it does happen sometimes. And actually, my relationship with my wife is an example of it. We used to have social proof, right? So you would generally date somebody within your neighborhood, in the general vicinity. And if you didn't know who that person was, you knew someone who did know who that was. So you could be like, hey, I really like this guy, Bob. Oh, Bob, that's that's their son.
Right.
Oh, they're a good family. You would hear terms like this. It wasn't a complete stranger.
Right.
And also with that comes a sense of responsibility as far as treatment goes. Because Bob is part of the community. Bob can't ghost you.
Right.
Right. Now, if Bob is no longer interested, Bob needs to tell you.
Right.
Right. He can't play games with you. He can't do any of that stuff because there's ramifications that happen. So like with my wife, I know her brother. So if we were getting together and I just slept with her a couple of times and never called her back,
right,
I have repercussions coming out because I know her brother.
Sure.
So like we're missing that when we just go on an app and swipe, complete stranger. We know nothing about them, and we're starting from ground zero, and have to figure out, is this person the person they're showing me on the first date? So it becomes tremendously hard, and then what ends up happening is people get demoralized because it's a bad strategy to date somebody that you don't know. It doesn't mean that you can't find success, but it's a bad strategy of all the strategies of finding some sort of long-term relationship.
Yeah, you're right. It's evolutionarily speaking, it's not normal. It's not how it used to be until very recently. You know, I'm Jewish and I date Jewish men. And so when I'm on the dating apps, it's a little bit easier if they're from the area, because even if they're not, because if it's possible to figure out who they are and like check them on Facebook, I could see if we have mutual friends. You know, I actually don't ask women about men because it'll never be an objective answer. Because either they dated him, they have a friend who dated him, they want to date him, their friend wants to date him, they heard that he had been married to a woman and didn't treat her right. Whatever, you're only getting like the female side of the story, and either it's, you know, intersex competition, or, you know, I mean, I'm not saying all women are terrible, but women are not always, they may not have the full story or give you the full story, whatever. So I generally not do that. I would ask a guy, you know, what do you think? Oh, I met this guy. What do you think? Because the guy will give me the right, you know, probably the honest answer.
Yeah, as long as the guy is not trying to sleep with you, he'll
that's a good point too. Yeah.
He's likely to give you an honest answer.
Yeah.
So
right.
Know. But that's also part of the social proof. Like, you remember, we hear the terms, come and meet the family, so my dad can meet you.
Right.
And the dad can be like, oh, this guy's a scumbag.
Right.
He can tell right away. Like, and we can see it.
Yeah.
Like we and I'm sure women have kind of the same instinct. Like, you know, if this girl is loose, and you're like, I'm not hanging out with her. Maybe we can go and party once in a while, but like, she's not watching my kid, you know. But like, guys can sift out like, oh, this guy's a scumbag. Oh, he's shady.
Yeah.
Right. And so I'm saying this as a father, but I have a son. Like, I would imagine if I had a daughter, I could be like, ah, that kid's okay,
Yeah.
right? Or something about him, there's something about that kid,
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
I think there is something to it
I
that,
agree with you.
you know, it's instinct, and some of it is just familiarity. Like, you just, as you've gotten older, especially you become a parent, and you know, you've just been around a lot of people in work environments and stuff like, so you've seen different personality types.
Mhm.
You're like, I know that guy, or maybe that
Yeah.
guy was me,
Right.
and I was shady back then.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Oh, what was I going to say? I, I, gosh, I don't know. It'll come back to me. But it was it was obviously on that topic about, oh yes, this is it. So, um, I either met a guy on an app or he asked me out, maybe on Facebook. I don't remember.
Mhm.
And, I somehow his name came. Oh, it was like the sister, or no, a friend. Somehow it was a connection. I don't remember what it was. But the woman who's married said, "Oh, he's a player. He's a player." And I went out with him a couple times. There just wasn't a connection. And for Otherhood, my book, I interviewed some men about their perspective on why it's harder for men and women to connect. And so let's say he was 40, you know, and he volunteered. He said, "Yeah, oh, this is what it was. I meant to meet him at a bar, and his buddy, who's married to that woman,
Mhm.
was there. And he met me, and then he left. And I said he stayed so he can meet me. This was kind of like fun for him to like meet who's this single woman you're dating." He goes, "Yeah, actually, that's true." Because because my married friends think that I'm going on all these dates and having all this sex, and it's really not true. They think I'm a player. I'm
Mhm.
not a player. I'm looking for something real.
Mm.
And I said, what's happening is they are projecting. If they were single, because you marry people, well, there were no apps in my day, or, I never did that. They kind of want to like think, if I had I'd be be sleeping around, I'd have all these dates. And the truth, that's not what most single people want. Certainly older single people, that's not what they want.
Right.
Again, there are exceptions. So we kind of sometimes do have assumptions about people, sort of these stereotypical, cliche versions of what we think people are and how they behave. But the truth is, if if given the opportunity to be honest, um, they will tell you how they feel. And often enough, men are much more vulnerable than women expect.
Yeah.
And um, and to our point earlier, women are also now supposed to be like men, having sex with all these guys. And I'm sure there are women who are doing it and they enjoy it. Most women do not want to keep having sex with various men. That's not sort of what is who we are. Now, again, I could write him letters, don't write me. It's possible, but it's just not sort of, to your point earlier, women want to feel secure and protected. I wrote a piece in the Post about this too. Like, even those small things that are not really literally going to protect the woman, like the old-fashioned point of walking curbside, walking on the outside of the sidewalk, used to be a protective way because things were coming down from the window up above or being splashed on the sidewalk. The man would get splashed instead of her. Um, when a man does that with a woman, the woman just feels like, oh, like she feels more feminine. Like there's something about that. There's something about chivalry that makes
Mhm.
a woman feel protected. And um, and I do believe that that's a very attractive thing. And earlier when you were saying, if there's a point of uncertainty, it's not attractive to a woman when a man's uncertain. There is sexiness to decisiveness.
Yes.
A man who says, "I want to take you out," not so like maybe like maybe we could, like, I don't know, like hang out, I don't know, like like, no, I would like to take you out. Okay, sure. um Tuesday, 8 o'clock, this restaurant. Does that work? Yeah, that's like the hottest thing a guy can do.
Mm.
Be decisive. Yeah. With the one of the most unattractive thing is a man who puts it on the woman. He asks her out, but then, puts her in the driver's seat. It's just not something most women, don't write letters, like. We want a decisive man, but also thoughtful. For instance, I was asked out by a guy years ago, and he said, and it was pouring rain. It was one of those April days in New York City that were just damp and cold and miserable.
Mm-hmm.
And he wanted me to go all the way across town. I'm on the west side to him on the east side in the pouring rain because, there's this great Italian place right downstairs from my apartment. I literally said to him, when you're ready to take me out, let me know. Well, no, I could, no. And sure enough, he called, had made a reservation at a sushi place around the corner for me, and we went out a few times. The fact that he thought, I'll just have her come all the way down to me in the freezing cold, like pouring rain, just a miserable day.
Right.
And I'm just going to, buy her a slice and have her come upstairs. It's so not attractive.
Yeah. It's funny. I can't tell you when I was dating how many women I talked to said they never went on a date.
What? What do you mean?
Well, because they weren't real dates. They were come over.
Right.
It was very low investment, right? And ultimately it was just hookups. But there were a few that they were like, I've never been on a date before.
How old were they?
In their 30s.
Because they're not putting their foot down and saying, I don't really want to come over, but yeah, totally. Pizza's cool. Let's go here.
Honestly, I think it's, there's a whole psychological side I could go, especially for one I'm thinking about. But I think that they had low expectations of treatment and also the type of men they were choosing, right? So they were choosing the player, the scoundrel. They were picking that guy.
Yeah.
And that guy doesn't care, right?
Right.
So you coming over or not?
Right. If you're not, he's going to text the next girl.
Right.
And she, by the way, is thinking, you know what? Yeah, I'm cool. Like, I'm feminist. I can totally, whatever. But pick me, pick me, pick me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's going on college campuses with all, everybody's hooking up, the hookup culture, which sounds old already. It's like 10 years ago, big deal, hookup culture. Well, the ratio on campus is 60-40.
Mm-hmm.
And of the 40% men, how many of them are men that the women want to date, right? And so the girls, no, it's not really a date. No, we're just hooking up. But she is so thinking, I'm just going to go home with him now because otherwise she's going to pick, my friend. And let me just prove to him like how good I am in bed or how, he could see my abs working, whatever it is. It's really pick me, pick me. And it's rare that he's going to pick that girl because it's too easy. And unfortunately, we all want what we can't have.
Right. I was telling you earlier about how my wife and I met, and we got together because we were just talking. We were just friends. And kind of like what, like that show, Brandon, I knew what she looked like. But I was living in New Jersey, she was living in New York.
Mm-hmm.
So we weren't like talking and then like, I'll see you tomorrow.
Right.
We were like talking for weeks
mm-hmm.
and not seeing each other.
Right.
And every night, because I was by myself, she was by herself, and just being completely blunt, we were both lonely.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
So it really just worked out. So it was like every night I called her at 8.
Oh.
She got home at 7, give her some time to change and do whatever. And I would call her at 8 and we would talk for hours.
Oh.
And so from there, we just started liking each other.
Sure.
Right. And I think there's that emotional bond that's missing. And there's this this narrative that men don't care about that. Right?
About what?
Men don't care about emotional bonds. That's a woman thing.
No, that
And it's
breaks
like,
my
no.
heart to think that people think that. Of course, men care.
Yeah, of course we care. Like for the life of me, I could never understand. And I get it. Like if your marriage is on the out, but they almost make it sound like you hear from like certain married guys who are like, oh, I got to hang out with the wife. It's like, you don't like hanging out with your wife? Then why did you marry her?
Right.
Right. And I realized that a lot of guys marry the woman that they're consecutively having sex with. Right. They're having sex and then she wants a relationship and they're like, all right, well, I might as well. And then everything seems to be okay. And she likes me, I like her. All right, we'll turn this into a marriage. Right. She's putting it down on me, so I gotta propose. Like they just roll it into something. But he doesn't like hanging out with her.
Yeah. Right.
Like my wife and I have been until she met me, she didn't travel anywhere really. And we got together and the basis of our relationship was about traveling. So we go, now we've made it like a yearly thing where we go somewhere.
Yeah.
I like being around my wife.
Oh,
I like
good.
talking to her. We could talk for hours about anything. And I like seeing actually, I'll tell you my favorite thing about my wife. My favorite thing about my wife is when she experiences something for the first time.
Oh, tell me a story like that. Like what's an example?
That's the funniest one. So before she met me, she wasn't really into electronic music.
Okay.
And then like hanging around with me, she listens to it. She's like, I kind of like this.
Yeah.
I listen to a lot of it, all different types. So we went to Berlin.
Okay. Oh.
And I told her, I was like, there's a club in Berlin that I went to, you got to go to. She said, okay, it's called Trezor. It's a famous techno club. So I told her like there's a whole experience just getting into the club in Germany, especially in Berlin. They ask you questions and stuff like that. So she's all ready for it. She's seeing people get kicked out of the line and stuff like that. And as soon as we step up, me and her, they said, excuse me, ma'am, when you go inside, if you feel unsafe, you do this, you do that, no questions asked. And she was like, why didn't they ask me questions? I was like, because you're a woman. Right? And they saw, I'm with you, we're a couple, we're low risk, we're not going to cause trouble.
Right.
Right. So I'm explaining all these things to her. She's like, wow, that's interesting. It's not like that in New York, right? They don't ask you all these riddles and questions and stuff.
Right.
So we go into the club and she's like, wow, oh my goodness. And she's walking away. And she turns around, I'm not there. Where am I? I'm getting pat down. Like, so I catch up with her. And the club is interesting because it's like 2 levels.
Okay.
On one level, you go up, it's like short stairs, and there's the dance floor, and there's a bar. It's nice. The music's going, and it's more like housey, like house type music that's going at that moment. It sounds good. So we get a drink. I down it. I was like, let's go. I don't drink, but I only drink when I like go out on vacation. So I'm like, I down my rum and coke, and I said, do you want to see the other location? She's like, yeah, I want to see the other one. So we go back down the stairs to bring you back to like mid-level.
Yeah.
And then what you do is you walk, and it brings you down this pathway. So the pathway, if you picture like in a movie, like a mine, like a coal mine, where there's like it's like rustic looking.
Yeah.
Right. So we're going down this rustic path, and all you hear is doom, doom, doom,
Right.
doom, doom, doom. And she's like, what the hell is that? And we're going, and it's getting louder and louder. And it was like one lamp here, one lamp here. So it looks very rustic. And she's like, where the fuck are we going? So we make it to the end, finally, of the pathway. And we see there's like two openings. To the right, it ends up going to like a rustic bar area. And then to the left is the dance floor. So there's fog, and all you see is silhouettes of people and flashing lights. And she's like, what the fuck is this? And I was like, yeah. And so she started walking towards the dance floor with me. And she's like, her eyes are wide open. Like, am I in hell? Like, what the hell is this? And then I was like, yeah. And I'm starting to dance. And I look away for 2 seconds. I look back at her, and she's like, woo!
She let loose.
She let loose. She had the night of her life because it was completely different. Then the clubs here, like in the hip hop club, where you have to wear makeup and stuff like that. They had no mirrors in the bathroom. You're not allowed to have flash photography. They literally cover up the camera on your cell phone.
Wow.
Like they want you to go in there, have a good time, dance. You didn't worry about what kind of shoes. I told her, I was like, wear comfortable shoes because you're
Yeah.
going to be dancing. And she had so much fun. And I see that story I tell all the time because watching her reaction and experiencing something,
Yeah.
an experience that she would have never experienced if it wasn't for me. And that's something that I really enjoy.
Yeah, I can see why you would enjoy that.
Yeah.
Because you're letting her into your world, the things that you really enjoy, and seeing her experience them for the first time and enjoying them to the degree that you are in that moment. I mean, you know, you fall in love all over again in that moment. That's awesome. That's amazing. And I'm happy you have that. And it's great that your wife is open to trying things that she wouldn't have done. Like if it wasn't for you, this is like the last thing that's not what she wanted to. She, you know, maybe she wanted to go to like a soft, you know, romantic, quiet night in a restaurant or something, right? But an adventure is also something that triggers that kind of connection, that sort of that, you know, our hearts are racing and it, you know, the adrenaline and all of that. That's great. That's exciting. And I think to your point earlier about, you know, sort of the relationships where you don't grow, where you're just, you know, you're just hooking up, and then to your point, you just fall into something because, well, now you're hooking up only with each other because at some point you kind of commit to each other, et cetera.
Yeah.
As opposed to, you know, those the falling slowly, you know, taking the long road and not listening to the friends who say, yeah, but, you know, you haven't gone on a date in 3 weeks. Come on, you know, maybe he's just not that into you. Otherwise, he'd ask you out. But sometimes, you know, the long road is the way to go. And maybe it doesn't work out. Maybe that's not it. But there's nothing wrong with cultivating that connection. And to your point is, you know, even if we know people who were 2 degrees of separation, we're still strangers.
Right.
And to get to know each other on that level, I think is really powerful. And
one thing, and I'll add.
Yeah.
She asked her brother, listen, I'm starting to like him. Is he a good guy? And he had nothing bad to say about me. So I think for her, that really allowed for her to let her guard down.
Yep.
And say, okay, I'm gonna do these things with him. I'm gonna see the world with him. You know, I'm really starting to like him. I don't want to get hurt because he's really like this. You know, so I think, you know, to add to your point, the stranger element, I think is a major element.
It is a major element. And it's also, frankly, why people tend to date within their group, whatever that group is. It could be religion, it could be race, it could be, you know, on campus, whatever that group is, because even if they don't know each other, even if there's not a second degree of separation, there's some connection. Like even if 2 people from Atlanta who never knew each other and they're 5 years apart, so they wouldn't have even known each other even if they were in high school together, right? And then meet up in New York City. Oh, I went to that camp. I went to that camp. Oh, I went to, you know, I had so-and-so as a teacher. I had so-and-so. Like those points of familiarity connect you.
Right.
And, you know, that there is something about that I think is really powerful. And something that, you know, unfortunately, things like the apps often don't enable us to find or to see.
Right.
But then again, you know, there are people, oh, you know, if only people shouldn't be on the dating apps. Well, those are married people. And unless you have somebody to set me up with, no, thank you. First of all, certainly during COVID, what were people going to do to meet? But because we're going to bars or like, where were you meeting? We're going to social event. But even like before and after that, you know, sure, people go to bars, but not the way I think. I mean, I'm not as young anymore, but not the way I think we used to. People are just not going out, and they'll blame people for saying, well, yeah, because you're home, you're on your apps, you're, you know, video game, whatever. But I also just think that the things we used to do to meet socially don't happen as much anymore, and I don't know why.
Mm.
It's once in a while I'll be invited somewhere. Well, we have a mutual friend. Our friend Batya invites us for Shabbat dinner. We've met we knew each other before, met in person,
Right.
right there. But it's so rare that we invite people over. I think we need to do more of that. We need to, or find places where people can connect, like in person. It's just much harder for people to meet. And yeah, of course, there is laziness. It is easier to sit on your couch and go through the app to see if you could find somebody than actually going out and doing it. But
Right.
and I think of that to myself, but then I think, but where am I going? Where am I going?
Yeah, I mean, I can't tell you how many people that I've learned don't have any real friends, you know?
Yes.
And
That's a real issue with men, actually.
yeah, yeah. And, even if like you work in a different city than you live,
Mhm.
it's hard to bridge that,
Yeah,
that, you might, I've had work friends. It's hard to bridge that into like a real friendship.
sure.
Sometimes it's not advisable to, depending on what you're doing.
Unless he's your future brother-in-law.
Right. Well, there you go. It just worked out that way. But I think human beings, especially throughout the United States, are more disconnected. And that
Yeah.
trickles into the relationship market because you're not accidentally running into someone.
Right. We're not going to the, well, again, I live in New York City, so there is no mall, but we're not going to the mall we used to. We're not, in fact, in Manhattan, what's interesting is that people bump into each other on the street, friends, oh, and your friend has a buddy with him, and oh, you meet if you're just in your car all the time from spot A to spot B, it's harder to do that. But those in-person connections. Okay, so I think what we should say to those watching, hopefully you're still watching, is just make a pact that have a party. It doesn't have to be like an electronic music party. Just have, dinner party.
Right.
Invite people over. And if you don't cook, like make it potluck. Order in, whatever it is. Maybe part of the get together, people cooking together, which is really bonding.
Right.
Maybe I did this for my birthday. I think it was my 36th birthday, 37th birthday. I sent out the invite and I said, in lieu of gifts, bring a man. I wanted to meet single men. And I was like, Bachelor was, because Bachelor's always been on. I think like Moses was a bachelor. I don't know. I was handing out like the yellow roses to the guys. So maybe it's bring a friend with you who I don't know, and not necessarily for a dating thing, but like that, a girlfriend, a guy friend that, think would connect, with our friends. People are having, sort of these intellectual parties where somebody comes to speak, talk about their book. And it doesn't have to be like some big name. It could just be even a friend who just had a book come out.
Right.
Girlfriends and I, do Shabbat dinner sometimes together. I don't do it as often. I actually do FaceTime with my dad and stepmom Friday nights because they're in Montreal. It's this way of me to spend time with them. It's actually really powerful, this whole Zoom, Facebook, FaceTime thing. Anyway, but, cooking together, preparing together, everybody planning, like we all need to find ways to do that. And connect. And to your point about friends, like we're not cultivating our friendships because we don't take and I'm guilty of it, don't take our heads out of our phones and TV and whatever else. And we do have friends online or sort of this parasocial relationships, but they're not real relationships.
Right.
But they are powerful. And you know what? I've met women, online, on Twitter, like-minded people. And eventually we met in person and we become good friends. And because you already know you have a lot in common. And again, this isn't about a romantic relationship, just friendships.
Right.
You know, why not, if you've been like, you know, following somebody on Twitter or Instagram or whatever, like a friend, slide into their DMs and like, hey, look, you know, you're here, I'm there. Like, let's grab coffee, let's get together. I've had women do that. A woman actually, she saw me on Facebook. I posted when I like to cook for myself, and I always like plate it very pretty because I'm worth it. And I will put it on Facebook so other people can see it, because why waste the beauty just on me? Right? I want everybody to see my beautiful salad. And a woman who I don't know messaged me, but we're Facebook friends, you know, ton of mutual friends. Hey, you know, I saw you post that. I'm actually in a couple of weeks I've invited, you know, X amount of women over, like 7 women, and we have spot for one more. We're all making soup. Everybody brings a different soup, and you bring, you know, enough for every, like a little container for everybody. But, and we're going to taste it all and talk and whatever. I'm like, I don't want to do, who is that? I don't know. Why would I do? And I'm hoping she's like in Brooklyn and I don't have to go in Manhattan and make an excuse. She lived across the street from me. No joke. Like literally catty corner. And you know what? I went. And you know what? They were lovely women. And it was so nice. And I got soup. And I had all the soup and it was delicious in my freezer. I would defrost when I have one. We have to find ways to connect with each other and make an effort to do it. We need to have friends. You know, one of the greatest, most important things that one can do for longevity is a social life, is friendship.
Yeah.
And COVID took that away from people, especially elderly people who couldn't get out. Nobody was visiting them. You know, young people, like my friends and I, we walk, whatever, middle-aged people, we'd walk around, we'd see people outside, we'd all like text, okay, we're meeting at the park at this time, like we had a social life. So elderly people got older during COVID, like obviously they did chronologically, but like they got older psychographically.
Right.
We need a social life. We need to find ways to connect. So hopefully, everybody find a way to connect.
Mm-hmm.
Look, you're doing it now. Like I'd be home working, you know, and here we are, we've connected. And why? Because we knew each other on Twitter, but because Batya had a social event.
Right. And I didn't even know you were going to be there.
That's right. I didn't know. Right. And that's what I like about her things, by the way, because you never know who's the secret guest, who's the cool person. There are a lot of cool people around her. So that's really important. And I think, and even going, by the way, you know, because I've had some guys contact me about how do I meet a woman? Like, I don't know what to do. And these are guys in their 20s who are not incels. Mm-hmm. These guys want a relationship. One guy messaged, he's like, well, is it like ethically, is it okay if I start going to church? I'm Christian, but I'm not religious at all. Like I never go to church, but can I go to church? Because, you know, there might be women there. I'm like, honey, come Monday morning, 80% of them are not church-going people. You know, don't like, go. Of course, go. That's what church is part. You know, again, I'm not Christian, but synagogue's the same thing. Like that's what community is for. Right. Of course, they're going to welcome you. Of course, it's okay. I mean, it's wonderful. And it's social. So even if he doesn't meet a lady, maybe he'll meet some guys. Maybe he'll meet a family who'll invite him over for some holiday and whatever. Right. We have to find ways to do that.
Yeah, for sure. You know, we have to do more to connect with people. That's honestly the reason I even started doing this series, at least in this particular manner, was because I realized how beneficial it was to meet people in person, starting from abroad. You know, I was meeting people from, you know, bouncing around Europe, and I would meet people from different parts of the world. Uh-huh. And, you know, like, for example, in Barcelona, I met this woman from Australia, and we had tapas, and we were just talking about American politics for like 2 hours. And it was a really nice, memorable conversation. And I've made friends that I kept in contact with, right? Because we met in person and we had a nice dialogue, and you know, I check up on them and stuff like that. Yeah. So I think I think a lot of people are like me, but I take my friendships seriously. Yeah. Like if someone like in my head, you're a friend. Uh-huh. Like, how can I help you? Like, are you?
I mean, okay? I have a list. Was I supposed to bring it out?
No.
It's on my phone. I could just pull it up.
But like,
Yeah.
I check up on people. Like, I haven't heard from you in a while. Are you okay? And I think that's really, really important, is to have
Mhm.
to impact other people's lives
Yeah.
the best way that you possibly can. And not because like, I want them to do that back for me, but like,
Of course.
because you care. If they're
Yeah.
your friend, you're supposed to do certain
Just do it for
things.
the sake of doing it.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes, and I know you do this, you don't even have to wait for them to ask to do something nice. So, like on Twitter, I see a friend is like, their podcast is out and it's a great show. And I've listened to it, or even if I'll share it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I won't say it's great if I haven't listened to it, because I'm always honest, and I'm sure it would be great. But you know what I'm saying? Like, I'll pick something out of it. I'm like, oh my God, that joke was hilarious, whatever it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we're all in the same boat. We're all trying in life, whatever it is. And we all got to give each other a boost. And sometimes, because people, if you ask to help somebody, sometimes people don't know how to say yes. People need to get better at asking for help or saying yes when it's offered. And so sometimes it's important to just go out there and just help people, just be good, just be a friend, just support them in however you can. Just show up, by the way. That's really important. I have a friend who, no matter what I did, a book launch, a birthday party, whatever event, whatever it was, he always showed up.
Mm-hmm.
Even if for a book event and I had like 3 of them, he showed up. Even if he could stay 5 minutes and say, well, I've got another thing, but I want to show up.
Mm-hmm.
Getting off the couch to show up for a friend is unbelievable.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that we've inspired some of your viewers and listeners to do something to connect with other people, whether, again, it's like having a dinner party or meeting people in the park or whatever you do. And maybe they will tweet at us or message you on Substack or whatever it is and tell
Mm-hmm.
us what they're doing. Because I'd like to know, like, what are people doing to connect? And maybe, I'll share the ideas. Like, I'm really into it. I'm really into people finding ways to see each other in person. This parasocial relationships, I'm not saying they're not important. They are, especially when you're single.
Mm-hmm.
And so many Americans are single today. But it's really important to get off the couch and meet people in person. So hopefully people will let us know what they're doing.
Well, and I hope so as well. We're nearing the end.
Yeah.
But I'd like to ask this question. Are you optimistic about the future?
Oh, there's no other way to be. I mean, if I'm pessimistic, why get out of bed? If I have a bad day, I have a little motto I tell myself. That's what tomorrows are for. Something doesn't work out, that's what tomorrows are for. And you didn't live up to your own expectations, that's what tomorrows are for. And without believing in a tomorrow, that there's opportunity tomorrow, please God, we all have a tomorrow. Well, what's the point of getting up, right? So, yeah, I'm optimistic for the future. Otherwise, why live?
No, I completely agree with you. I'm optimistic, like in general.
Mm-hmm.
Like, obviously there are issues. We just talked about some of the issues, but I look for the positives, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
Your interactions with young men who are saying, I want this,
Yeah.
right? Despite the media, despite the noise, despite, some cynical person that might be in their life that says, women are this or men are this, they still say, I want to get married.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that there's something generally that gives me hope. Like, that's the positive
Mm-hmm.
light that I look for. I think about my personal life. We just got married just a couple of years ago. I'll be 40 this year. So it took quite a while for me to find someone to actually get married to. And a lot of it had to do with me and becoming a better man and stuff like that. to find that type of person to have like a happy marriage with.
Yeah.
But it happened,
Yeah, it happened.
you
It
know,
happened.
and so I think
And you
that
nurtured it and you were
yeah,
patient with it.
yeah, exactly.
You didn't give up. You didn't say, oh, it's too difficult. She's in the city. I'm here. How are we going to see each other? It's not, you were patient. You nurtured it because you saw the potential.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm in general, I'm optimistic. I do think that we need to have more person-to-person interactions.
Yep.
You know, me doing this series, I think it's important to kind of encourage an open dialogue with people,
Mhm.
and find that commonality and just have like a good talk and good meal.
Yeah.
You know,
Thank you.
did you like your sushi?
I love my sushi.
Okay, good.
Delicious sushi.
Excellent. But I guess we'll end it here. I really do appreciate you coming over.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. Lovely home. Thank you again for lunch. It was so great having this conversation with you. And I'm really, excited for what's coming for you. I think you're really building something, creating something really special.
Thank you.
You're a special guy. And I'm sure that comes out to those watching. I hope it does, because I feel it. And I'm just very happy that I was able to do this.
Thank you. No, and likewise for you.
Thank you.
I see what you're doing as well. And yeah, we need more people like you.
That touches my heart. Thank you.
No problem.